Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Pac-Man here, and I am back for the likes of the Maxi Toys videos. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more Let's Play of Pac-Man World for the Game Boy Advance, or if I like to call it, the watered down version of Pac-Man World. So, last time, we essentially did manage to wrap things up everything in terms of the space world by going into not only space race, but as well as far out. In addition to that, we also did manage to able to rescue yet another Pac-Man's friends, and that's what appears to be Professor Pac. So naturally speaking, it was about the fact that fundamentally speaking, we're now on to the halfway point in this version of the game right now. Because as far as I'm aware, is that today for this video, is that we're about to be continue things on and move on to the next world, which does manage to take place in the Funhouse World. So because of that though, yeah, let's get to it with clowning around, and eventually at some point we'll go on to Barrel Blast at some point as well. So either way, so yeah, what I found was a little bit odd about this is about the fact, I'm pretty sure about the fact that there was one particular level has been removed entirely on the Game Boy Advance version. That's what appears to be about the fact that there was this level called Spin Dizzy, because as far as I'm aware, it's about the fact that I'm not exactly sure why that level was cut on the Game Boy Advance version, probably because of the handheld's limitations, and also as far as I'm aware, I don't think we can able to come across into a Clown Grand Prix kind of race level or anything else like that. So because of that though, yeah, it's just straight up 2 levels and all that stuff. And also you do actually realize about the fact that one of those worlds has officially been cut out for the likes of the Game Boy Advance version entirely. That's what appears to be the factory world. So yes, the factory world has been absent in this version. So because of that though, well, straight to the point though, is about the fact that once we finish up every single aspect in terms of the Funhouse World, straight to the point though, we might able to actually instantly go into the final world in the game, which does manage to take place in a mansion world. And also about the fact, I believe, one of those levels was also cut out as well, but then again though, we'll talk more about that until whenever we get onto the later discussion for probably by the end of this video basically. So either way though, yeah, a few things I want to talk about is about the fact that, well, today's date of course there is the 22nd of September today, in some cases in 2024 today. So yeah, we are getting very close towards the end of September basically, before we move on to the next month, which appears to be October. So because of that though, in addition to that though, is about the fact that we've only got about 4 more days to go until The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom for the Nintendo Switch will be releasing. In addition to that though, is about the fact I'm obviously going to be ignoring any spoiler moments when it comes to leaked gameplay and all that stuff though, just because I'm still basically waiting for, you know, the actual game to be released itself. So either way though, how the heck did I somehow die there? Oh, it's probably because of, again, the depth perception really did mess me up beyond belief. But that's okay though, because since about the fact that we've got one of those fruits, and naturally speaking of, that pretty much leads us to the next set of Pack Dodge Trails, which not only does it give me not only 1 life, but also 2 lives on that particular rooftop segment. So yeah, that's actually pretty generous enough, despite the fact about the fact that eventually at some points, this is where the game starts to get a little bit more difficult at this point. Not only because of how the fact that you have to do with some very irritating depth perceptions right there, but it's also about the fact that there might be a couple of times though about the fact that your movements was so sluggish, because honestly though, I can honestly try to able to actually go back on playing through not only the original Pac-Man World on the PlayStation, but also the remake as well, at least assuming about the fact I'm still only able to try to actually unlock every single trophies on the PlayStation 4 version of Pac-Man World Repack. So that's besides the point. So anyway, also about the fact that recently, during the Funhouse event today actually, that one marks the... Are you kidding me? Oh my god. What is up with the depth perception? So anyway, as I was saying about the fact that recently today, that will actually marks the 30th anniversary of the iconic sitcom for the actual TV series, and that's what it appears to be, Friends. So yeah, I can't believe that Friends has officially became, well, 30 years old since 1994, specifically in September 22nd. So because of that though, because I keep on heard about that particular series for that particular sitcom comedy. And as a result, no matter what though, I'm pretty sure that both Amy, Tiana, and Jewel, as well as the forms of any other like ponies, alongside with the Powerpuff Girls, have been talking about that quite a few times off screen. So no matter what though, it's a great way to able to celebrate the most iconic comedy of all time. Journey films have been made by Warner Brothers and all that stuff. So either way though, well, despite the fact I haven't exactly watched any of those episodes in my life, well, apart from the fact that there was actually cool Easter egg references here and there, like specifically playing video games in one of those episodes in particular. Like, I'm not exactly sure how do I describe it, but relatively speaking, one of those episodes in particular does manage to feature a gameplay footage of Crash Team Racing for the PlayStation 1, and I was like, that's actually kind of cool though, especially considering for the fact that my guess is about the fact that that was around that time when the game actually came out in 1999, or anything else like that on the PlayStation 1. Speaking of which though, it's about the fact that I can't believe by saying this, is about the fact that until at some point, Journey films have been later on in, 2024, that will actually mark the 25th anniversary of the game's release of Crash Team Racing for the PlayStation 1. So relatively speaking, man, time flies, especially considering for the fact that obviously that was about the fact that, like I stated this before, we are nearly at the end of September before we move on to October, and usually when it comes to October, this is where things gets a lot more exciting, at least to me anyway, especially considering for the fact that also during around that time, I believe we've only got about 4 more days to go until the Tokyo Game Show is going to take place. In addition to that though, we've only got about 2 more days left until Disney's Epic Mickey Rebrushed is going to be releasing on multiple platforms, including Nintendo Switch, despite the fact that I'm probably not going to get the game anyway though, mainly because, darn it, I somehow made that particular mistake right there. So, and this is where the point about the fact that this one makes platforming extremely finicky at one point, especially now these platforms decide able to pop out and then just trying to go back in or something like that. So yeah, it's gonna be one of those annoying sections here and there. And it's also worth noting for us about the fact that the game only gets harder from this point onwards, and always gets more annoying from this point and onwards, because platforming in isometric view just sucks. I mean, can you honestly tell about the fact I don't really like the Game Boy Advance version of Pac-Man World 1? I'm sorry, I just don't like this version of the game. It's such a, well, kind of a, watered down version as far as I've already explained this well enough as it is, since in the past few days ago, since, the past weekends or something like that. So anyway, so let's go and activate these switches here in case if we're able to continue our progression here. So, and of course what you expect about the fact that we can able to rescue yet another Pac-Man's friends, and that's what appears to be Baby Pac-Man. So as far as I'm aware, she's gonna be at, I would say on the next level, which appears to be Barrel Blast, because unlike the defaults of how it does on the console version, I'm pretty sure that you will save Baby Pac-Man during the evolves of an, I would say, Spin Dizzy level in a console version, including the remake. So okay, I somehow got the extra life, so it's better than nothing, I suppose, unlike the forms of how it does it in Far Out's level, that for some reason, though, is about the fact that if you're trying to open up the Galaxian door, it just gives you nothing, which I was like, that's a bit of a waste, especially concerning for the fact that I totally get it about the fact that because of the handheld's limitations, but still. Also, we got the returning pop-up pirates ever since in the Pirate World, which I'm not exactly sure why they're there, but regardless of everything else, though, is about the fact that we could potentially try to ignore them for now, especially concerning that we somehow equipped the metal power-up, so that's all I can really say about this, I guess. So, anyways, though, there's also another thing it's worth noting for, actually, and that's what appears to be about the fact that, well, remember what I said before, is about the fact that we are fully appreciate that the Powerpuff Girls has officially made a massive comeback, and during the forms of in the game called Multiverses. Well, not only about the fact that those, you know, beloved superhero girls finally makes a massive comeback, but from what I can tell, they're basically going to be voiced on their original voice actors. So yeah, that's actually pretty awesome to me. In addition to that, though, is about the fact that there's also going to be their evil counterparts, the Rowdy-Raff boys, will be as alternate skins with their original voices from the show returning as well. So yeah, that's actually pretty cool and everything, especially considering for the fact that, well, it's nice to see the original, the Powerpuff Girls, get the actual representation, unlike the forms of how it does on this very, very terrible 2016 reboot, but that's besides the point. So anyway, also, there's actually another thing is worth mentioning for, actually. I don't suppose if you noticed, but basically though, according to Comic Fan 13, that basically though, he did manage to point it out, there was actually technically the Amy Rose only kind of game, where basically though is about the fact that there was actually the Amy Rose did have their own game for the likes of the forms of in only in Japan, which appears to be in only being playable in Sonic Cafe and Puyo Puyo Sega. And that game in questioning was called Amy's American Page 1, which as a result though, it's basically like a card kind of poker kind of game, where basically though you actually have a face off against with not only Cream the Rabbit, but as well as Rouge the Bat, and even the Hero Chow from Sonic Adventure 2, which I was like, okay, that seems kind of odd, especially concerning for the fact that we have not got any of those specific Amy Rose games since that particular game I was on about earlier, which is of course Amy's American Page 1. So relatively speaking though, I did not know that exists. So either way though, it's a shame about the fact that I'm pretty sure that game was only released in Japan, so, and it's never been localized, so yeah, it's kind of unfortunate. But regardless of such though, that was a pretty interesting fact right there. So also about the fact that, oh, also I just realized about the fact that, as you can tell, we ended up in the forms of that particular platform-to-platform segment right there. Well, originally though, on the console version, including a remake, specifically the 2022 remake, mind you, that basically though is about the fact that we have to go for that particular spherical rotating platform. So unlike the Game Boy Advance version, on the other hand, well, that particular rotating sphere obstacle right there, where you're trying to dodge those heat panels and all that stuff, well, that's been replaced as in you go from platform to platform and you have to make yourselves upwards. So just to ensure for the fact that you can able to actually make your way to the very top of that particular segment. Again, it's probably because of the handheld's limitations. Well, mind you, it's hard to explain because oh my gosh, I'm so sick of the forms of that particular sticking out platforms and all that stuff though, which, trust me what I'm saying is, it gets worse from here, especially concerning for the fact that, again, that you will waste a lot of lives very fast. So mind you about the fact that, well, luckily though, we are nearly done with this particular game right here before we move on to the next bunch of Let's Plays until 2024 is about to be finished and done with. So, because relatively speaking, I was about the fact I'm sure about the fact that we'll easily guaranteed able to catch up on, not only for Luigi's Mansion 2 or Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, but as well as The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening remake on Switch, just before, you know, Echoes of Wisdom will be releasing during that time. So, but either way, and I do apologize for my tongue twist in the end, folks, but that's just mainly because I was expecting to try to say something else, but relatively speaking, though, that's as far as we can able to say about this, I guess. Well, there's also another thing is worth mentioning for, actually, is about the fact that there's actually going to be a crossover kind of special is going to happen sometime in next year in 2025, and that could be something related to My Little Pony, specifically not only G4, but possibly G5, despite the fact that G5 was not doing very well in terms of popularity or anything else like that, because obviously though, the merchandise they somehow got is very limited, because obviously though, the actual G5's existence did somehow manage to came out during the forms of in a pandemic, because no wonder why it only came out on Netflix during some form or another, in addition to YouTube as well for a completely different series, but that's besides the point. So yeah, I'm very curious to know of how that's going to turn out. Like, for instance, they did mention about quite a few things here and there. Like, for instance, there would have been a new show featuring both G4 and G5 characters. So yeah, I'm very curious to know how that's gonna turn out. And the G4 characters are still much more well known, which is very surprising, concerning for the fact that obviously though Friendship is Magic, or specifically Generation 4, is the most popular one out of them all, mainly because of the actual specific creator, and on top of that, memorable characters, memorable songs, and also memorable set pieces, including world building here and there. So because of that though, makes sense to me though, especially I still really, enjoy Friendship is Magic, even though mind you about the fact that I can assure to you that specifically until next month, which appears to be on specifically the 12th of October, my goodness, the final episode of the entire show, specifically The Last Problem, will eventually become 5 years old until whenever we get on to the 12th of October, which, kind of thinking about it though, I do somehow remember something. That was around that time when Daffy Duck did somehow manage able to wrap things up every single aspect when it comes to Super Mario Galaxy 2 for the actual Let's Play, as soon as that particular episode was on live, in addition to the ending to the end, both parts 1 and 2, and relatively speaking, it was about the fact that, yeah, it seems kind of crazy, kind of thinking about it, especially that I still even remember when me and Daffy and the rest of the gang managed to watch The Last Problem for the first time, and my goodness, we are bursting into tears back in almost like 5 years ago, and it still managed able to does that to me throughout. So yeah, it still is pretty sad indeed, but still. Anyway, back on topic. Wasn't that surprising that Hasbro would want to use them again, and then My Little Pony: A New Generation was admittedly planned as a G4 reboot, which it was going to, but either way. And also they did somehow point out that the new show would likely have replaced Telltale as the main series, and finally the new show might have been made very quickly if it was conceived this year and intended to be released by mid-2025, so that's going to be next year during that time. It took around 18 months for Make You Mark to go from inception to the release of Chapter 1, and most people seem to agree that it was too rushed. So that's my point of view when it comes to the forms of Make You Mark series as a result. Well, to be more specifically, the first 3 chapters to be more specifically, although the premise looks a bit promising, but I will admit though right away, it's about the fact that while I decided to look back on it though, my goodness, Chapter 1 is the worst aspect when it comes to Make You Mark. I mean, it's kind of like a similar situation as in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Calls Past Pack 1, because obviously that was about the fact that because of not only for its graphics, but it's also about the fact that, well, mind you, about the fact that it's been about a year ago since I actually have last watched Make You Mark series, because as far as I'm aware, my goodness, the cliffhanger was actually kind of promising, but ultimately though, we never seemed able to get the continuation episodes of Make You Mark, but that's just mainly because of this very mixed critical reception. So either way though, again, hard for me to explain because I know for a fact it has been about quite a few hours ago since I actually have mentioned something like this, especially concerning for the fact that, well, you get the idea for this point, mind you. So, anyways though, also about the fact that one thing I did not expect about the fact that we can able to see some more games will be shown in Journey Forms in a Tokyo Game Show. Like, I know for a fact that some Toys Else or Maxi has mentioned about this for the sake of the forms of Level 5 Tokyo Game Show lineup, but as far as the forms of the Sega / Athletes Tokyo Game Show 2024 lineup is concerned, well, they did somehow mentions about quite a lot of games that's going to be listed for that particular upcoming show, which appears to be, well, as I said before, the Tokyo Game Show. So let's run down the list of specific titles that will be revealed during that specific show coming up. So, For Konami titles, it will able to actually show us eFootball, as well as the forms of ND Games Contest 2024, Student Championships, as well as Metal Gear Solid Delta, which is basically a remake of Snake Eater. So, and there's also the forms of, I would classify for saying, Powerful Pro Baseball / Professional Baseball Spirit's 30th anniversary or something like that. And there's also the forms of Silent Hill 2, and also there's the forms of that remastered compilation pack or something, and there's also the forms of Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links, and as well as the forms of WBSCE Baseball, and I think that's as far as I can usually try to able to say about this, I guess. I mean, I would have liked able to explain something else for that matter, but also, for what I've heard anyway, they're also trying to able to actually show off Sonic Rumble or something like that. Well, then again, we'll have to wait and see what happens. And I think finally, though, is about the fact that recently, though, I don't suppose if you noticed, but recently, though, I've somehow managed able to unlock the next cosmetic character in Sonic Dash, and that's what appears to be Surge, and this time what appears to be Valhalla Surge. So, yeah, because obviously, though, it's almost inspired by Thor, except the fact that obviously, though, it's about the fact that, well, Surge is obviously so obsessed with electricity and stuff like that. So, and I suppose the next character I'm actually in the process of trying to unlock right now, that's what appears to be Detective Vector. So that's going to be up next in terms of trying to unlocking specific characters in Sonic Dash before I decide able to take a break, unless if they decide able to reveal Movie Shadow coming up until to go alongside with the release of Sonic the Hedgehog 3 the movie until probably by the end of the year. So, but then again, we'll have to wait and see what happens in due time. So either way though, also something tells me about the fact that this section is going to be pretty simple. So one thing was a little bit bugging me when it comes to the forms of trying to do with isometric platforming, in some cases in this for instance, there's no drop shadow if you're trying to able to land on this platform, which makes it impossible to determine what you're gonna land on. I mean, usually relatively speaking though, it kind of reminds me like a similar situation as the forms of whenever when I somehow managed able to play through Sonic Unleashed on my spare own time, specifically the Xbox 360 / PlayStation 3 version by the level called Eggman Land. My goodness, you have to deal with a lot of the lack of drop shadows here and there if you try to deal with some very tricky platforming here and there, but that's besides the point. So, I think, fundamentally speaking now, we are basically essentially done every single levels in terms of the Funhouse World. So again, it's not that very long though, and straight to the point, we now ended up in the final world in the entire version of the game. That's going to take place in a mansion world. And for some reason, not only do we have 2 regular stages, but also the only boss fight we can able to actually face off against. So again, it's a very strange transition right there. So I suppose with all that being said though, is about the fact that we got the endings of this point right here. So join me next time for more of Let's Play of Pac-Man World for the Game Boy Advance. Is that potentially speaking of, this will be the finale by going into the final world in the game, which is the mansion world, starting with creepy catacombs. So yeah, I will see you guys until our next Sunday. Later, fellas.